Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly DSS Break. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're here live every Thursday to talk about data science experiences and best practices with leading data professionals in a 15-minute break. I'm Anna Annison, CEO and founder, formulated by the home of the Data Science Salon, and I'm streaming here directly from our HQ located in the heart of Miami, right next to the Design District. And today I'm really excited to welcome Filipa Castro, data scientist at Continental, a German multinational company known for production of passenger and commercial tires. Filipa started by developing autonomous solutions for the subsea environment. That's super cool. And then moved to the surface as she is currently working for the automotive industry. That's a super interesting path. And coming from a startup, Filipa will talk about the difference of applying machine learning in small companies versus enterprises. And thank you so much for joining us for the DSS Break episode, Filipa.
Thank you, Hannah, for the nice introduction. And hello to everyone that is here today with us. So thanks for the invitation to be here today for some nice discussion. So just to briefly present myself and give some more context. I'm Filipa. I sit currently in Porto, in Portugal. And like you said, I started my career in the computer vision field as a data scientist. My background actually is in biomedical engineering, but then during my academic years, that's where I found that I really liked machine learning, and in particular to work with image and video. And that's why I decided to follow this path. So I started in a startup, yes, and around 1 year ago, I decided to shift to a bigger enterprise, also to get this different experience that I hope to share a bit today.
Awesome. No, that's really exciting that you started your background in computer vision and machine learning for subsea applications, which is super interesting. Could you tell us a bit more about that research you've done in that field?
Yeah, of course. So basically, in my previous company, I worked mostly with videos, video data coming from the underwater environment. So these videos were collected by remotely operated vehicles. Basically, these are big vehicles that are normally connected to a vessel in the middle of the ocean. Then they can dive to the underwater environment. And the main goal of my research was to to automatically detect different entities in this subsea environment. So this could be living organisms like fish, different kinds of fish, and also different underwater structures. So, for instance, in the oil and gas field and the industry, there are these big structures underwater that need to be regularly inspected, regularly maintained. But this is a very manual process right now. So you need a pilot to guide this remotely operated vehicle. And the goal and the vision of the company is to build autonomous vehicles for the underwater.
That's really cool. That's very
Environment.
interesting. What is something, I mean, maybe have you come across something really weird down there? Like, I mean, I know there's things like Titanic down there, but I'm just wondering, I'm sure that...
Yeah, exactly. So this kind of old vessels, I knew there were some, but actually it's much more frequent that I would expect. So sometimes we would receive videos from different clients, and yeah, it actually surprised me that it was so common to find these old vessels underwater. And of course, we also had a nice collection of strange fish underwater. Yeah.
No, that's really neat. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that you changed your focus now, focus from ML research to application. How can research and applied ML benefit from each other?
Yeah, so this was one of my main goals, not only to experience a bigger company, but also to shift from a bit from research to applied machine learning. So I would say that research, of course, can tremendously benefit the applied ML, because once you have your dedicated team, the dedicated resources, the dedicated budget, you have much more time, flexibility to be creative. And if you have this team there, it's a big competitive advantage, mainly in this field where everything or almost everything is open source right now. So even Facebook, Google, they are sharing their trained models, their data sets. They publish a lot of papers. So I would say that if you don't dedicate the effort and if you don't invest in your own research teams, then probably you will be doing the same as others are doing. So it's, if you really want to be inventive, research is the path to follow. But of course, I think also to do research, pure research, without the chance to test your models in a real scenario. So I think this is very important, and that's what I'm experiencing now, that if you have your own data, your real scenario, this also brings you competitive advantage, because uh, it's very likely that if you are not able to test the models in the real scenario, then probably the research team is not focusing on the right things. So imagine that you just try to have a very accurate model, a very robust model, but then it doesn't work in the real scenario where you need less inference time. I don't know, maybe where false positives are much more important to care about than false negatives. I don't know, but you need to test it and iterate, and then this kind of brings some more clear goals and relevant
Right.
goals to your research team outside.
Exactly. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the next question that I have is, what is the difference between, this is the big question, and I know you're going to be talking more about this at the event next week. And what is the difference between really applying ML in startups versus enterprises? Maybe you could talk a little bit about it without giving all of it away, but maybe we could talk about a few different things, because that's definitely a very interesting topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so next week I will mainly talk about the challenges that we face in Continental, so in a big enterprise. And regarding the differences, at least this is my experience. I think it might be a bit personal, of course, because if it was other startup or other big company, maybe my experience would be different. But for me, the main difference is that if you are in a big company, you have your own data, so you are the one that produce the data. So let's say
Right.
images from tires, we collect them. If we want more data, we can generate it. While in a startup, normally you are producing or building a product for others, and then you depend on their data. Every time you want feedback, you depend on their feedback. When you are building the scope of the project and the requirements, you need them to help you define these requirements. And at least in Continental, a lot of the data science work we do is for internal purposes. So my colleagues in the production line are the ones sometimes that will use the product that I'm building. So in this case, I think it's much easier uh, to have these internal resources.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, because enterprises have a lot bigger budgets too, and a lot more
Exactly.
revenue
Also,
too. And maybe
yeah.
now we could talk about a couple challenges as well that applying ML in large orgs, because I'm sure there's definitely challenges, because in a startup, I'm sure you could just do things more quickly, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about that next.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, in the startup environment, in this field of data science, where every day you have new papers, new technologies, it's really fast. So I can just tell my team, okay, there's this new tool, let's try it. And maybe in 1 or 2 weeks, we are actually using it in a daily basis. In a big enterprise, the same can happen in your team. So for instance, now I'm working in a data team with 10 to 15 people, and this can happen that I propose a new tool, we start to experiment with it, we can actually use it. But in the enterprise, the big effect comes when you also convince others, you share the knowledge, and you also make it easy for others to adopt the same tool. And if in like 1 year they decide to adopt this tool, because we don't have one data team, we have uh, a lot of data teams working in different fields in Continental. But if they want to use the same tool maybe 1 year from now, we should make things easier for them. So maybe build trainings, build tutorials, share the knowledge. And this seems easy, but in a very big company, it's really a big deal, I would say.
Yeah, you're almost like selling your ideas, right? And convincing people that they need to implement them, versus in a
Exactly.
startup, you could just get things tested and like throw them out easily.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so
Yeah,
I think,
convince is the word definitely.
yeah, exactly. No, I feel like both of them are challenging, right, in their own ways. So awesome. No, I think you actually answered my last question. My last question was about successfully implementing machine learning solutions. I think you talked a lot about, the adoption part. Is there anything else you want to add to that before we wrap up?
Yeah, so right now for doing this, trying to exchange this knowledge in an efficient way, we are creating some ideas and some processes there that I will also share next week. So I can maybe mention one of them, which we call the standards. Some companies, I know they call it like the golden path. So basically, it's kind of designing guidelines, not for the sake of it, but just to recommend some tools, to recommend a path for someone that wants to start implementing AI, and basically be there to support them in this adoption. So recommend some tools, recommend some tutorials, make the tools very accessible. And we believe that in the long term, this will make a huge impact in the organization.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for sharing all that great information. I'm really looking forward to your talk next week. And Filipa is going to be speaking at our DSS virtual event next Wednesday. So it's a free event focused on machine learning and AI in the enterprise. And we have 10 different speakers and panelists to share their great experience. So make sure to register. We're going to share the link in the comments section. And thanks again, Filipa. It was really nice to chat with you. And I'm excited to see you next week again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, and I hope to have a lot of people discussing next week.
Yeah, me too. And thank you guys, and have a wonderful rest of the weekend.
See you. Thank you.